Hello weirdos, welcome to another video, and we are continuing on trying to make videos about my freaking end of the year feelings about things. So today's is statistics. We are looking at statistics because I did manage to finish and review, put 5-star ratings on stuff. So I'm going to start screen recording. Yes it is. Okay. So for my Goodreads challenge this year, I am going to do what I did last year, which is 120 books. I like that number. So here is where I am so far. I have read one book out of 120, and so far that has just been Wicked Fox. So I am technically one book behind schedule. Oh no. Hopefully that'll change in the coming week. But who knows? I saw someone's advice, which was to read a bunch of short books in the beginning of the year. And I categorically did not follow that. All of the books that I started reading, I think, were like over 400 pages. But we are not here to look at the books that I have read so far in 2023. Let's look back at 2022. So last year, my reading goal was 120 books, and I surpassed this. Last year was amazing. I beat out my record. Oh my god, like, it was so amazing. I think my previous record for the most books that I had read was like 153, and this year I blew it out of the water by like 10 books. That felt so weird. And this all year also didn't feel like a book that didn't feel like a book. Of course it didn't. It was a year. It also just didn't feel like a year where I had like a ton of extra time to read. I was very, very busy. It was my last semester of college, which was just insane. Weird feelings there, and just I had a lot of projects. I was really, really stressed on like most of my projects. I had my senior design to do, and that I had to do virtually all by myself for many reasons, which isn't entirely fair. There were a lot of extenuating circumstances, but for the most part, I was doing a lot of work. It was very stressful, and felt that way in other classes. And then summer hit, and I was looking for jobs, and graduation hit, and then I got my job as a computer science teacher, which is, I love it, my dream job, and I've been working on busting my butt to try and keep up with my students and learn the things that I have to teach them. Even though I know the stuff, I just have to figure out the school's specific style of teaching the things. So yeah, super, super intense year, and yet I was still able to like blow it out of the water. It was so weird because when I hit 120, it like didn't really register. I think I hit 120 in like November or October, and it didn't really register, and I looked and I was past it, and I was like, oh. And then I know when I hit my record, that felt really important. Year in books. Oh god. Why is it so hard to find? This is another thing I don't like about Goodreads. Anyway, so I read, according to Goodreads, a total of over 61,000 pages, which is weird. The shortest book that I read is 66 pages, the El Escorial. And the longest book I read was The Veiled Throne, at clocking in over 1,000. And the next one is coming in the end of January, and that one's more than 1,000 too. So that's probably gonna be Ken Liu, man. You're writing some bangers that are chonky boys. The average book length was 367. Not bad. My most popular was To Kill a Mockingbird, which is actually, I mean, it makes sense, but it's also not a book that like I've heard a lot of people like talk about. Like, I've heard a lot of people talk about it, of course. It's like an American classic. It's not like in the butt. Like, no one's making book talks about To Kill a Mockingbird. So that's interesting. The shortest was Lincoln in Medicine. And only 17 other people have shelved it. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I think it's some indie published author. My average rating sits squarely at a 4. So, you know, not too bad, I think. I think most of my ratings tend to be average out about a 4, because I, you know, try to read books that I like. My highest rated, How the Word Is Passed, well deserved, that is a fucking good book, and I gave it 5 stars. Was very, very good. My first review of the year, Beijing Comrades. I love Beijing Comrades so much. But this is by Bei Tong. It is one of my favorites. It is, I don't know if you can see it, but it is on the shelf. Yeah, it's this, you can't, yeah, it's that red spine. It's that red spine on that shelf. I love Beijing Comrades. It is a book that I constantly am thinking about in like the back of my brain, and I'm constantly like, do I want to read it again? The amount of times I've said that to myself in the past 4 months has been a lot. But yeah, I just said that it destroyed me in the best possible way. I love angst in fiction, and Beijing Comrades is full of it, chock full of it, and it's gay. So there you go. And here just overall are my books that I read. Fairly boring statistics, if I might say so myself. Yeah, so there you go. I beat my reading goal by 39%. So that's good. Let's look at the other statistics that Goodreads gives. This is overall. We can see things overall. So in the past, like, I guess 5 years now of me tracking these things, I don't look at this very often because guess what? It's hard to freaking find this, and you can't find it that easily on the app. So I don't check it often. But yeah, again, highest rated. This is my highest reading year. I blew my other numbers out of the water. Same thing is going to be true about page count, although it's interesting to look at 2021, 2020 or so similar. I want to see what the details are. Ooh, oh, okay. So this tells me the breakdown between what? I have definitely rated these other places, but I'm not going to go through and rate them here because I've rated them other places where I care more about the statistics. Here we see the pages, which again, that's my greatest page number year. We see the overall distribution. Again, I'm tending to read stuff that has been published more recently in the past like 20 or so years, or definitely in the past 50. I sometimes will read stuff like Sense and Sensibility that was from a long time ago. And Jane Eyre was really good though. My Country, My People, I, Robot, To Kill a Mockingbird, Wizard of Earthsea, and Tombs of Atuan, I, Rigoberta. Yeah, and it all kind of makes sense. Books over time. You see this nice graph. Look at this beautifulness. It's interesting to see that even though I've read the most books this year, I still haven't beat my July of 2020 where I read like 23 books. That's just, I don't even understand how that happened. But this year, numbers have been super high, and even my lowest months where I was literally in pain and couldn't really read for like a good like 2-3 weeks, or not at the pace that like I really wanted to be able to read, I still hit 10 books. I think this goal of just in general like hitting 10 books a month is a really sustainable pace that will get me to 120, and I like how easily it divides. And yeah, I think I've only ever felt twice these two months where I felt like I might not have hit it, but I did hit it. And that was in September and in August. And part of that was due to my injury. And the other part was just adjusting to a new job. So those points were times of like great transition in my life that I was dealing with, that I couldn't really like focus that hard, or didn't have a ton of spare time. Whereas now I feel like I've settled into somewhat of a rhythm. So I have the advantage on that. And if we look at pages over time, and these graphs look very similar, but you'll see the book where I read the most pages is actually in March 2021, which makes sense. I read some chonky books. I read some chonky books. That checks out. All right. Enough with the enough with Goodreads and their bullshit graphics. Let's look at where the actual cool statistics to see are. and that is the story graph. So I have been avoiding looking at this. So let's look at stats. And let's look at 2022. I've seen this button so many times and I've not clicked on it. A lot of the information is generally going to be the same. I don't know if they're doing something different. Ooh, they are. Oh, wait, do I look at this or do I just show you the graphs first? You know what? I'm going to go and show you the graphs first and then we can look at those because I don't know. I'm just weird nerd that likes to look at this information. So again, we have the same thing. I met my reading goal. Good for me. Overall, I read primarily emotional books, which is interesting. What qualifies as an emotional book? I don't know. Peony in Love, Broken. Yeah, these were all good books. I don't know. It just seems very like, I don't know. It seems very arbitrary. I don't really like this like moods thing. I don't find it very effective or helpful for me to think of like my books as moods, because that's not how I think about them. I think about them in terms of like genre and whether or not they affected me or not. And the least one that I read was sad, which is interesting because you'd think that since I read a bunch of emotional stuff, I also read a bunch of sad things. But we only have a few. I don't know. Why is Ages for Hawk? Sad. I don't know. But it's tagged as sad. Oh no. Okay. Next. So that's a mood. Then we have pace. I primarily read like about middle-paced books. With some fast-paced, some slow-paced. I don't quite understand pacing either. Because some of these I'm like, these aren't fast-paced, but okay. Or it's just like collections of things where you can like pick it up and like put it down. Like On Animals is just a collection of essays. So I don't know. But it's interesting nonetheless. I'm primarily reading things that are somewhat hefty, but not chunky, not over 500 pages. And I am reading a good, like a little under a third that is small. So it makes sense that I can't, it's really hard for me to get through those longer books because they are longer. And I just think that in terms of like overall publication, there are just more books that are published between the 300 and 499 page range. Today's another year. This is the biggest upset. It's the most interesting data that I've seen, and when I'm thinking about my reading over time, that fiction was greatly outpaced nonfiction, which I remember last year it was very neck and neck. There was like one book difference. There were massive differences in this, and I don't know if it was just because of the amount of change that I was dealing with, that reading like heavier books or books that are more dense, that are nonfiction, just weren't calling to me because I needed more comfort reads. That's definitely how I felt. It's definitely how I felt at the end of the year when I primarily read mostly like fiction books, and those I think tend to move quicker because there is a plot to them. Genres, I feel like these genres have been coming up more frequently. Like history is in the top 3, which I think before it was it is also have been supplanted by fantasy. But in my past years, history has been the top genre that I have read. For the first time, it's actually fantasy, and then gayness is right next to fantasy. So those make a lot of sense to me, those top 3, because a lot of the books that I have been wanting to read that are fiction have been LGBTQ of some form, and that has just been bringing me a lot of joy. And I think, again, it kind of points to the amount of just upset and stuff that has been happening in my life to make it, when I am reading things that are fiction, I am choosing to pick up books that are queer in some way. rather than reading things for like projects and stuff that aren't. So if I look at like what some of the LGBTQ books I read, if it will actually open, which it doesn't look like it wants to do, will it click on any of these? No. Oh, will it do it for here? I did it for the other one. I don't know if it's a hardware issue. It might be my hardware. No, interesting. Can I do it with the moots? Okay, yeah, I don't understand what's going on. Let me try to refresh the page. Oh. The internet died. It should be connected now. I checked. I'm getting all of the bars, signals. Okay. They just went away again. Okay, so I should be connected roughly soon, maybe. There we go. Okay. Wow. Okay. So I wanted to show you my LGBTQ, what some of those fell under. It's like 42 LGBTQ books. Yep. These all check out. These were all gay in some way. Reading a lot of them, yes, a lot of these were just pure comfort reads. Okay, let's go back to stats and we're getting close to finishing. Okay, and then we can look at the reading wrap up. Tags. I don't really utilize tags that well. I've just been using it as a way for me to keep track of the Goodreads Choice Awards. I could use tags more effectively. I just don't really feel a need. I don't know. I don't know. So yeah, I read a lot of stuff that was 36 books and read some books for the 2022 Goodreads Choice Awards. So yeah, it all makes sense. Everything was read in the same format because I really only make note of the format when I read it solely on ebook or solely on audio, which happens so rarely. So yeah, let's look at authors. My most read author is Moshang Tongshu, which is of no surprise. Like most of these books back here are all by her. And I have been wanting to get my grubby little hands on these. So I have been reading through them and none of her work has audiobooks, so I've been alternating like reading one of these and like reading a different book that doesn't have an audiobook, and getting it through there. I read a lot of Leigh Bardugo and I regret it. I like Leigh Bardugo, but not YA. Yep. Then I read a whole series by Margaret Atwood and a whole series by CSB Cat and a lot of TJ Klune and yeah, I'm sure there's more than one book or more than just those authors where I've read multiple books from them. Languages doesn't show me a graph. It just said, oh, I read everything in English because I did not practice reading anything in Spanish. This I find to be very interesting. So you can kind of see how, like, if I'm like mapping on what was kind of going on in my life. We had January where I had like 2 weeks of like vacation. I was not in school and then stuff, you know, then went back to school. So I couldn't read as much in February. That's why I was doing a lot of that. March, things were getting like really intense, in terms of just having a lot of stuff to do. And even then I read 14 books, and then my lowest for, you know, being in school was April, which just lots of flying pieces happening in April, finishing up, like wrapping up, finishing up projects and graduation. All of that was happening in April. May stuff still stays like about kind of the same, because also, if you remember, that's when the Johnny Depp trial happened, and I watched that like a good 80% of that trial, and the portion that I missed was at the beginning during like Johnny Depp's, during some of Johnny Depp's witnesses, because I started watching when he was watching, because I've watched a lot of streamers, specifically like legal streamers like Emily D. Baker, and so I lost a lot of reading time to that. And then stuff starts climbing up again in June because trial is over. I have a lot of free time on my hands because I'm looking for jobs. And it's a very stressful time because I'm also looking for jobs, but also job hunting does take a lot of like mental energy, but doesn't exactly take like a lot of like your physical time. Like you will have like maybe 2 or 3 30-minute interviews in a day, and those are exhausting. But honestly, the actual prep that you have to do for an interview, other than just making sure that you know what the frick you're talking about, does not take a lot of actual time. At least not in my experience, because I just have to brush up on a few concepts, maybe do a little bit of research, find out a couple of things on the website that I like and want to ask questions on. And then July, my biggest number, because again, I had my job by July. So like that whole month, it was just me like just waiting for the next thing to come along, which was work. And then we dropped back down again in August. So August's numbers would probably be like maybe somewhere in between July and June's. But like August is when I got injured, and if you don't know what happened, I sprained my ankle really, really bad, and like I probably just could have broken it and it would have healed probably faster and easier. And for the first solid 2 weeks, and definitely for the first week, I could not read like anything. I was reading to put like numbers on these graphs. I would read like a chapter of something, and that was like the extent of like what I could read for that day, because I just was so like tired. First of all, just plain tired, because when I hurt myself, I was also in literally the process of moving. It happened like, I want to say like 12 hours before when I got in the car to move to Boston. So yeah. So there's just a lot of that was just me stressing about how on earth am I going to get this chair, that lamp, these books upstairs when I could not walk upstairs. Yeah. And then just pain too. Like it just was just a lot of pain and uncomfortability. So I could not. And then September again kind of stays lows for maybe not similar reasons, but just again, school is really ramping up. Students hit my classroom, I want to say like somewhere between September 10th. So dealing with being a teacher for not the first time, but first time where it's like my job and I'm paid for it. Yeah, intense. And then stuff starts climbing back up in October and November. As I'm getting into those routines, we have some breaks in November, and then December, those last 2 weeks was just me on vacation and trying to deal with a lot of things. So that's a breakdown of that. My star ratings got a pretty good distribution. Got a lot of 5 stars, which is good. I round up in Goodreads, so all of these 4.75s and 5 stars, they would be just a 5-star. And so then everything from 3.5 to a 4.5, I would mark as a 4-star. And same thing goes here. So a lot of these are my 3 stars. And I did not read a lot of goober stinkers. So that's good. Like I read one book that I really did not like, and another book that was just kind of that I didn't really like. Yeah. So I read a lot of really good things, and my average rating does actually match Goodreads, which is interesting. Anyway, now I want to see what this reading wrap up is. I got a little glimpse, but I haven't looked at it. Okay. Oh, I wonder if it says congratulations on a fantastic year for everybody, or if it's just those who met their goal. But I read my goal. This says I read slightly less than Goodreads, but I don't actually care about like the actual numbers. So my first book that I read was Lincoln in Medicine, and the last book I read, I ended 2022 on a good note with A Long and Angry Planet, which I marked as 5 stars, so it was really good. What is this? Mood mapping of my reading? The lighter... What? Okay, this is interesting. So lighter books push the line up, and darker moods push the line down. Oh my god. What does this say about me? Mood map of reading. And it changes color. So I don't understand how that works. September, October, apparently I'm reading really depressing books. Damn. I don't understand how this is calculated. I'd be very interested to see how that's calculated. This is a very interesting graph. Okay. I think maybe it's pulled down because I read a lot of angsty shit and I love angst. Love it. I explored new worlds, felt all the feels, and reflected on ideas, and most of the stories developed at a steady pace. Okay. Here is the graph that I went through before, and it tells me congrats for reading my reading goals. Again, my top 5 genres: fantasy, LGBTQ, history, romance, and young adult. Okay, so this one's interesting. This one tells me that The Enlightenment is the longest book that I've read, and the other one tells me that it was The Veiled Throne. I like Goodreads' answer to this question better because I did not like The Enlightenment. I thought it was that's the 2-star. That's the piling trash heap. Again, this one tells me that the El Escorial is also my shortest, so that makes sense. Average length of books you read. Okay, see, this is the thing. People tell me I read books quickly because they hear, oh, 167, like, oh my gosh, that's so many. That's like X amount of books a day. And I'm just like, I don't finish books in 3 days. I don't know what you're talking about. And here is the thing. This is what it's telling me. It took me average to read 16, like around 16 days to finish each book. But since I'm reading so many at once, like if you spread 16 out, if you I'm maybe finishing in like a couple of weeks, and that data might be skewed because I started this thing where I checked out like 30 books off like from libraries, and I was just sort of like reading a chapter from like each, and learned maybe about 2 weeks into the project that it was not sustainable. And I have still it still says that I'm like currently reading like 15 books. I'm not. I'm like actively reading more like 5. And I just have the problem of, do I say I DNF'd those or not? So I'm thinking that this year, like last year, my reading statistics are going to be a little bit skewed because of that. And so will next year's, because I just have all of these books that have been sitting on my currently reading, and it's saying me that it's taken me 6 months when it really hasn't taken me 6 months. So anyway, the least time I've spent on a book is a day. So that makes sense. And it said, yeah, the most time I spent is 118 days. A Long Way to a Small and Angry Planet is a perfect example of this. Like, I started reading that like back in September, and which was when I started this, and might have contributed to why I wasn't finishing books in September. So I just have like 12 books that like I'm midway through, or like a handful of chapters in, that I decided that was a stupid way to read. So I stopped. So nugget of salt. It might take like this year and like maybe next year even to make those numbers like more averaged out. Great. Authors that I spent the most time with is Moshe Tongchu, Leigh Bardugo, and C.S. Pacat. Makes sense. My 2022's average rating. Why did it say that it was 4 then? I don't understand. Anyway, but it said 4.62, so that's good. Reading a lot of good ones. Here's all the ones that I rated 5 stars. They were also good. I liked them so much. Then we can see my ratings breakdown. Ooh, I like these stats. These are cool. Some months were better than others. February, 5 stars. Really? Did I love everything that I read in February? Highest average rating? Turns out March wasn't your favorite. With an average rating of, did I read a bunch of stinkers in March? What? No, I want to see. What did I read in March? What? Let's look at this. Let's look at what I read in March. Oh my gosh, I did not know that. This is why data from the story graph is better. Okay, March. Really? What did I read? 14 books? Okay. Okay, so yeah, 3.25, 2.75, 2.75, 4. So good one. Plus 4, 4.25, 4.5, 4.25, 3.5, 2. Okay, yeah, I did read, yeah. 4. Okay. 3.0. I don't understand how that averages to like 2. I don't understand how that averages 2. I don't think the math on this has quite worked itself out. Because if it was an average rating of 2, I would have to rate a lot of ones low. And I don't think that if we look at... Yeah, I'm thinking that what it's actually doing, and this just might be something that they need to work out the kinks for in terms of the coding on the backside, they found the maximum value of something that I rated in February instead of actually taking all of the books that I read, taking their ratings and averaging them together. I think they just found what is the max, and then for March it was like what is the month with the lowest. It'd be actually interesting to like actually test this theory and temporarily change one in, I don't know, July to be, instead of, oh, let's make it easier for myself, and one that I know was really good. Okay, Lore Olympus, rated at 5. See the review. Let's change my review from a 5 to a 1 star and update, and then here, refresh. March, okay. I don't know. Maybe it's one of those things I'll have to come back to, but interesting. Because that, I don't think if we did the math that would work out to be 2 point stars. But I'm going to switch this back to 5 so I don't forget. And then people are like, why did you rate Lore Olympus so low? I don't know. Read the most pages in July. That makes sense. The most shelved, To Kill a Mockingbird. That makes sense. Least shelved, 3 users, Lincoln and Medicine. That makes sense to me. Highest rated, How the Word Is Passed. That again makes sense to me because that was a good book. You explored works of 172 authors. Wow. That's really interesting. Walter Isaacson or even Max Out and Richie Robertson. Wow. They read 58 books that are a part of a series. That's interesting. I like that stat because I do feel like I started a lot of series this year. And yeah. There was only 1 new stories. Oh, so it's telling me that I didn't do any rereading. Okay. Oh, it also tells me another stat of like which books I did not finish. Which I did choose to not finish, Sally Rooney. So I have 5 that I didn't choose to finish, which was, you know, a surprising number for me. You read 125 books from my own shelves this year. So that's good. That means I'm making progress towards my goal of actually reading down things. The actual success of like reading more books. I don't know. I successfully completed 2 reading challenges. Yeah, okay. Oh, so if I get a Plus subscription, I get extra data, including mood and place charts based on your reviews. Ooh, information about which book characteristics you like the most. Oh no. I'm very tempted to see how much is a Plus subscription. How much is that? Because I do like stats. I do like $5 a month. Ooh. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. Let me comment and let me know if I should get this. I don't know though. We'll see. Okay, continuing on. I think we're almost done, and then it's at a glance. Here are all of the books that I read. Yay. Well, dang. And then I can explore my stats, which will just bring me back to the page that I was looking at before. Wow, that was a journey. I had a lot of fun on that journey. I have to make a decision. Do I spend $5 extra on reading statistics? I don't know. I actually added, let me show you my spreadsheet that I keep. My book catalog. This is my giant book catalog. So I added some things. I don't tend to track things year by year, but we'll just kind of do like a snapshot of kind of like where we are now in terms of statistics. So some of the major like changes that I've made to this, there's maybe a little bit things with the layout, but you can see I have my overall collection of all of the books that I own. I have moved slightly down, I think, from last year. And again, I don't really track this year to year. It's just something that like I notice. I'm setting, I think I was at like 4.4%, like 44.4% of books that I've read in my collection, and I just went down because I keep acquiring books. The other big thing that I have added is, if you look at my genre breakdown, which is here, I used to just shelve classics and fiction, and those were the two like large distinctions, but I just kind of felt like those were just not representative of what I was reading, and I needed to add a lot more fiction categories. So I decided to go in and I created a gay fantasy, I created a fantasy, I created a history, which is a lot more illuminating to see what books am I buying. Have I broken this down by read versus not read? Which actually might be an interesting statistic to visualize. But if we can see, the books that I own like the most of actually is fantasy, and I think gay fantasy is like right after that, and the rest is just like small, like less than 5%. There's not a lot of other ones that are breaking past that 5, except for like maybe historical fiction, which is an interesting statistics to see. We have a general histogram. I like me a histogram. Then we have categories of audiobooks. So I've got a lot of stuff, which I don't know, I find this to be interesting to see what percentage of stuff, what do I typically have a lot of stuff that has audiobooks, and then what doesn't have a lot of audiobooks. And so we've got a lot of textbooks that don't have audiobooks. Yeah, it's just interesting to see which ones show up. And then this is the most embarrassing statistic in my opinion. This is the number of books that I have bought versus read over time. So yeah, something happened in 2022. I cannot tell you why it has caused me a spike to buy a lot of books. Maybe it's just because I'm bored. That's why I'm doing that. But even though I did read like 100 books, over 100 books that I have owned, I just couldn't even keep pace with the number of books that I was buying. So this year I'm going to try this thing where I actually have those two numbers reversed, and I'm going to make a conceited effort. I'm already behind if we look, because I think I've bought 7 books so far, and that number is 9 because I acquired 2 more books recently, but I'm going to read them in the next 2 months. So that has been my rule to myself, that if you are going to read them like in like the immediate future, like right now, like if it's a series or something like that, I'm gonna read it. Otherwise, I have to read like 8 more books before I'm allowed to buy more books for myself. And it's because I've only read 1 book so far. So we'll see how that goes. But it's interesting. It's going to be interesting. And I think that it's a way for me to help like curb my spending habits a little bit, because I am very impulsive when I buy books. And that has just been very, very clear to me this year. But I don't know how effective it will be, because I also just pre-order a bunch of stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I had a lot more fun than I thought I would looking at statistics. Maybe it's just because I'm a weirdo and I like data. Yeah, I don't know how to feel about a lot of this stuff. I want to see the code that is generating these graphs. That's what I feel, and that's how I feel. And I took a data visualization class, which was one of my funnest classes that I took for my computer science major. So much fun. And I have a lot of fun time visualizing data, cleaning data, and just manipulating data, playing with data. I give my students my book catalog as a spreadsheet. I just give them the one that has all the numbers of the spreadsheet, and I tell them to like find things like what is the like most recent book I've read, stuff that they can like use code to like figure out, and I easily have the access to the answers for, because I have this spreadsheet. And yeah, it's really interesting. I don't know. I'm very, very torn with the story graph. $5 a month. Is that statistics worth $5 a month? How much time do I spend staring at my stats? I don't know. I'm going back and forth on it. Because it's not only like, it's not only a question of like, because I can't afford it. I can't afford $5 of my like salary going towards reading statistics. But it also is, it's also supporting like a company that's not Goodreads, which feels good to do. That's not Amazon. So I don't know. All right. I'm going to end this video here, and I'm probably going to go feed myself because it is 8 p.m. and I have not had dinner. So, I will do that. Bye-bye.